Exciting countdown. I feel like that music really gets my heart pumping before it
I
begins.
was thinking the same thing.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's session on CMMC in 2026. We're going to cover scoping, scoring, and avoiding pitfalls in the compliance process. Before we jump into the content, I have a few housekeeping items. This session is being recorded, and we will be sharing the recording with registrants afterwards and publishing to YouTube. So if you don't have anything that you want made public on the YouTube world, please don't ask any sensitive questions in the Q&A. Along those lines, we encourage you to ask questions at any point in the session through the Q&A bubble at the bottom of the screen. We have reserved time at the end of Jay's content to address all the questions possible. A little about me. I am the VP of Product and Partnerships at SBCC. We are a defense contractor focused on delivering the best technologies to the Department of War, and we host these sessions monthly to help companies in our network navigate different complexities in the defense space. This particular session is special to me because I am joined by longtime business friend Jay Anthony. Before I began working at SBCC, I was running a financial technology startup called Card, and Jay was the partner in crime there at helping us get through compliance. So he and I together worked for 6 years on SOC 2 and PCI compliance. So I've seen how his company operates behind the scenes in some high stakes compliance frameworks. Jay is the founder of Audit Liaison, a firm that has guided hundreds of SMBs through government compliance frameworks. And I'm excited to have him here today. Jay, great to have you. And I will hand it over to you to tell us a little bit more about yourself, about Audit Liaison, and then we can jump straight into the content.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. I appreciate the warm intro. And it's wonderful to be able to continue to work with you. Hey, I'm Jay Anthony. I am, as Katie said, the founder of Audit Liaison. We started in 2009, so been doing this quite a while. We've worked with pretty much all the different compliance frameworks. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Wheeling, West Virginia, which is probably the most core thing about me and kind of bleeds through everything I do still. And went to Wake Forest, got an accounting degree, and I started with Ernst& Young in financial audit. That became, rolled into a Sarbanes-Oxley that kind of became IT audit, and IT audit became information security. So I've been helping companies, yeah, for 16 years and doing different types of work like that for basically my whole career. So that's a little bit about me. I guess you want me to just jump into the presentation?
Yeah, I say we go for it.
All right, let's do it. So we do have a good bit of ground to cover, but as Katie said, I'm going to leave a lot of time uh, for the for Q&A because I'm imagining anyone who joined this has some questions. So yeah, let me just get into it. Don't completely know how much everyone knows about CMMC, so we're going to kind of go soup to nuts and get a little bit more granular as we go. Um, it all starts with um, you know, what they're concerned about is controlled unclassified information. So it's anything that's not, critical to the government, but that is absolutely important to them that they don't want to get out. So, how all this started, just kind of give you some background, is our overseas adversaries, started picking off small and medium businesses and stealing data from them, unbeknownst to the government. And we're able to compile enough from these small and medium businesses to basically breach significant intellectual property along the way. So that's kind of why all this started. So um, we're going to get into what CUI is a little bit more clearly here. So um, yeah, so let me go, Katie. I think I pulled up the an outdated one, but I'm going to jump back and forth, y'all, real quick, um, so you guys can see everything. But Sorry, bear with
Is there a link you might want me to share with the group, Jay, so they can follow along instead?
me. Yeah, so let me pull up actually, let me just go through this. So the control unclassified information, we covered that. To go to, we'll just jump into what is relevant for this topic. And what they care about is that defense category. So one of the important things that we wanted to cover today is make sure you understood the difference between when you can do a self-assessment and when you need to do a certification. So uh, basically, if you have CUI that's considered in the defense category, and we'll cover that in on that right column there. You're going to need to do some level of assessment. All these other categories, you can do a self-assessment under. So, under the CUI that falls into defense categories, it's controlled technical information, DoD critical information, infrastructure security information, naval nuclear propulsion information, and unclassified controlled nuclear information. So digging into those categories a little bit further, and maybe at the end, I can kind of, when we're doing the Q&A, I can kind of navigate to the different resources that are available, and in that way give you guys some kind of see where you can find the different definitions and everything else that you're going to need for this. But the good news, y'all, is all this stuff's publicly available. You know, it's produced by the U.S. government. They've created a cyber AB, the advisory board for all this to kind of govern folks like us who help with implementations, as well as the auditors who do these assessments, and even companies that are going to need to go through it. So the good news is all this stuff's available. Okay, so digging quickly into the defense category, the control technical information and the infrastructure stuff is really what we work with folks on. Um, it can be, you know, it's a lot, our companies, a lot of our clients will be either data center type of folks, or they have a SaaS product, a software as a service product that has they might be making flak jackets, or they might be making a part of a tank. And so they have drawings and they have part numbers and bills of material as to how these things are created. And again, that's why it's so valuable to our adversaries. The other ones are probably less applicable to most folks on the call: naval nuclear propulsion, and then privileged safety information, like literally, like, you know, life saving, like whether folks can be military safety and public safety. And then again, nuclear information is the fifth category. Um,
Possible to go
so,
back to full screen, Jay? Sorry to interrupt.
oh, thank you. Yeah. Um, yep. What I encourage you guys to do, and again, we're happy to consult on this, is, you know, I'm taking food out of my daughter's mouth, but you know, if you can self-assess. I mean, there are things you need to do to prepare to be even to be able to self-assess, but it is a much easier path. Knowing what CUI you have is obviously critical, and then the piece there, and we'll talk a little bit more in scoping, is, you know, where are we receiving it, where are we processing it, where are we storing it. And this last bullet, y'all, I can't understate. Your customers ultimately have all the power. You know, we have some clients that are borderline, you know, CUI and risk level that certainly seems like it would lean towards, oh, we'll take a self-assessment, where, especially because this is new, they're mandating that they go through, you know, a formal assessment with a C3PAO. That's what they call the auditors that do this. Um, all right, so what's CMMC? It's a cybersecurity maturity model cert. It's based on a DoD framework, and it all started with DFARS. It really, the change in DFARS is what created this. And if you're in the defense contracting business, you're probably familiar with it. But there's three different levels of assessment. There's level one, there's level two, and there's level three. Level one is basically, you have it's generally for the contract information. So basically, you might handle shredding for them. And so your access is you have contract information, you have some government contacts, and you basically provide shredding services. So you really don't have, sensitive data because they don't let you leave the site with it. So that would be a level one type of example. Level two is, as I mentioned earlier, more you're a data center that has sensitive systems in it, or you are a provider of a service or software platform that receives some level of sensitive information. And then level three is the most stringent, and that's you're going to know if you fall into that category pretty quickly. On that note, your customers will tell you whether they think you're level one, two, or three. And again, someone like us will help you fight for reducing that. But again, it's a tough argument. These folks kind of want what they want. So to go into the control families, um, there's 14 control families: access, awareness and training, audit and accountability, config management, identification, authentication, IR, incident response, maintenance, media protection, personnel security, physical protection, risk management, security assessment, systems and communications, and systems and information integrity. Probably makes some sense to all of you. I will tell you, the access controls and the identification and authentication controls, there are hundreds of sub controls that you have to look at underneath there. That's one thing about the count, y'all, is just so you understand. So there's 110 controls, but there's different components of the controls that you have to meet that you will be assessed against. So it really ends up being several hundred assessment objectives that you have to meet. And the more technical ones are generally the tougher ones to meet. And again, we'll talk more about it during Q&A for sure. So how do you scope this thing? The main thing is to reduce your footprint to the extent you can. The companies that have the most trouble with implementing a CMMC compliant program are those that have a lot of legacy systems, don't have a lot of physical and logical access controls, might have difficulty, old shared IDs and just poor authentication mechanisms to mandate things like complexity and lockout after a time period, those types of things. So if you have a lot of legacy systems, you're going to need some extra time to get ramped up, and maybe even you're probably going to have to be doing some upgrades. So the different asset categories as they define them are there's CUI assets where you're actually handling the data. There's security protection assets where your intrusion detection systems, your firewalls, your any logging and monitoring you're doing, those types of things. Customer risk managed assets are more your email and other things that you're interfacing with these government entities with. And then specialized assets are like your IoT, like your cameras and things like that, your access controls. The other thing to really focus on is external service providers. Who do we have that's either coming into our systems containing CUI or we're sharing that CUI data with? Those folks can really gum up the works if you're not careful how you share that information and how they interact with you. And again, I kept a link and we'll send the updated deck that has a few more slides that kind of explain a few more things. I truly apologize for that, but I don't. I was working on it earlier, and I think I picked up the wrong one. So, but the links will be there. I'll double check the links and the ones we send along. So there's a scoring system to all this, and basically the maximum score, the you're probably familiar with the SPRS. It's the supplier portal. Um, with the government for government contractors. And so there's a scoring on the controls of 110 points. I think you need to get 88 to get your certificate, and then you can clean up some items. Um, this is super important, y'all. And again, folks like us can help you identify these controls so you don't have, you make sure you have them implemented. But you can have an 88, but if you miss one of these risk level or impact level of 5 controls, which is the highest in this framework, you're not getting your cert. So understanding what's a 1 pointer, a 3 pointer, and a 5 pointer is really important. Mainly focusing on the 5 pointers, and that's why I gave you this slide as well. These are the ones that are 5 pointers. So basically, any of these controls here. And again, I'll show you the scoping guide. I'll show you the assessment guide. All these controls, the good news is with these links we're giving you, all these controls are spelled out. You can read it. You can actually pull down the assessment guide that the C3PAO auditors are using to see how they are going to look at you when they're looking at each one of these controls. So the good news is, y'all, this is an open book test. And these are the controls that if you don't have these in place when field work starts, when they first take a look at you, you're not going any further. You're going to fail and you're going to have to restart. Um, so what are some of the critical components for compliance? Policies and procedures that actually reflect reality are super important, and they need to tie to the third item there, the system security plan. So most of the companies we've dealt with in the past, like, Katie's Card, financial services software company, don't know what an SSP is, and you probably don't either. It's based off of the NIST framework. NIST 853 became FedRAMP, and the System Security Plan. It basically was the document they created to kind of summarize from the top down, literally. Um, who we are, what's the system look like, what inventory of assets, who are the key players are, authorization boundary diagrams and other diagrams that kind of show what the system security plan is protecting. And then literally like detailed control execution verbiage to address each of the control elements. So it is one heck of a document. It's that one takes a lot of work. We use that to create the policies and procedures because most people's any policies and procedures you have that exist currently are not going to reflect everything that's required as far as how you're meeting the CMMC controls. And then lastly, part of the CA group, the security assessment group, you do need to assess this stuff yourselves. And every 3 years is a requirement, but you're expected to be doing something each year. And to speak to that, there are so you report every year. You get audited every 3 years. As I mentioned, you need some sort of internal audit or assessment you're doing yourself each year, but you report through the SPRS annually, and then you get the full audit every 3 years. So greatest pitfalls. Poor scoping is definitely the number one. As I mentioned, the legacy companies that just have tons of those older systems that are not configurable for a lot of things that are required have trouble. Who your external service providers are, as I mentioned, is a big pitfall if you don't understand. And if they're a cloud provider, y'all, they actually have to be FedRAMP. So if you're sharing CUI with a cloud provider that's critical to you in delivering your product, they actually have to go through the FedRAMP process. So it's an even higher hurdle than what you're going to have to go through. Um, so the fourth bullet here is just not understanding the cryptography requirements. It's got to be FIPS 140-2 validated, and you got to know that's in transit and at rest. So, your databases have to have that ability. Your firewalls, VPN have to have that validation from a third party to say, yeah, that the encryption strength that we say that is there is actually there. Um, Config management is the biggest hurdle you're going to have. Audit and logging is probably audit and accountability, they call it, but it's probably your next one. There's just a ton of audit logs. You got to be doing regular reviews. You have to be reassessing those types of things. And then config management, every system within the environment, you have to determine, okay, what's our security baseline? What's our hardening strategy? And then you need to be measuring it periodically to say, hey, did the config on that Windows or Linux server change? If so, we need to create an alert and investigate what happened, make sure we have a change ticket to support it. And again, I kind of mentioned the audit log management process already. So annual assessment requirements, as I mentioned, so self-assess, you do it annually. Even if you're doing a formal assessment, you do that annually and get the full audit every 3 years. And then if you're level three, there's actually a government-led assessment. Okay, so uh, slide to kind of let you know who you're speaking with a little bit further, but founded in 2009, we've helped hundreds, definitely maybe over 1,000 at this point, get through the different audits. We've definitely been through thousands of audits. So from SOC 1, SOC 2, HIPAA, and High Trust, which are in the healthcare space, ISO 27001, and all the other ISOs. And then we've even done some FedRAMP work, which is even more challenging. But we offer prep services and then we offer vCISO services to kind of help keep your programs compliant, do that annual assessment for you, whether it's an ISO or SOC 2, that type of thing. And then, of course, help with the audits. And then with that, I'll open it up to Q&A.
So this is where anyone can jump in and give even pretty tactical questions if they want to on any of the material we shared or something specific that's on your mind related to CMMC.
Hopefully my showing the wrong presentation didn't scare y'all off.
I can start off with the basic one, Jay. When should a company start thinking about this? Is it when they're selling to a particular type of customer or they're building a particular type of thing?
Yeah, it's a great question. So again, if you know you have CUI data, and again, we can kind of show that, um, then you want to start now. I mean, these things go live. So basically, any contracts, any requests that the government puts out from starting in November of this year are going to have you must be CMMC certified, and your customers will dictate it. I would guess if you're unsure, if you're unsure whether you have CUI, we can discuss it. But normally, Katie, the customers are the ones that say, "Hey, we want you to do this."
What are my rights as a customer in pushing, I guess not as a company in pushing back on my customer? I think that you'd said that the customer always gets to make the final decision. Is there any wiggle room in that?
I mean, if you have someone who understands what data you're handling and kind of can explain the security around that data to ease their concerns, you can probably talk them down to a self-assessment for sure. Uh,
Another juicy question. What
yeah.
kinds of timing should I be expecting as a company that's either doing a self-assessment or needing to go through the full process? Like how many hours, weeks, resources should I be planning for?
Yeah, so if let's just do we work mostly in the level two space. Level one is you can knock out level one, and again, you still need policies, you still need the system security plan, but we're talking about a much more streamlined version. So you can do all that in less than 3 months. Um, Level two is going to take at least a year, which is actually far longer than doing even SOC 2 or even like an ISO 27001. It's as I mentioned, it's not just the 110 controls. There's assessment objectives associated with each of those as well. Um, and so that's I'm going to share a couple things too, Katie, just so you know. But hopefully that answered the question.
Okay, cool. So in the past year, CMMC has had a pretty significant overhaul. If you could walk through what some of those changes were, just for background for the audience, but also, do you predict that there will be additional changes going forward?
That's funny. God, I hope not. There's almost no way. So I think we started talking about this maybe even 5 years ago. The initial CMMC 1.0 came out. Um, I don't know why it was so difficult. What ended up the control stayed relatively the same. It was really the process around, what were the customers going to be required? how are the auditors going to do it, and what, people like us, what were the registered practitioners, they call us, going to, how are we going to function and interact with the CMMC advisory board. Um, it was really interesting, though. I think it's because of the number of companies that this applies to. We're seeing what happens with our customers. Again, it's generally like someone reaches out and says, "Hey, you guys are handling this type of data from us. We're being required from our government contract to be CMMC level two, and so we're requiring all our subs that handle CUI for us to be level two." Um, I guess, to answer your question, that's why it took so long. It ends up impacting the entire DoD, the Department of War food chain.
I have another question that came in.
Okay.
Are we able to push back on a third-party auditor when they refuse to answer how we failed a control and don't want to provide recommendations on how to fix the issue?
Okay, so that's a good question. They are not really allowed to give you a recommendation on how to fix the issue, unfortunately. But yeah, they should absolutely, if the auditor absolutely owes you an explanation as to why that control failed.
Okay, cool. Another question. What is the best resource to do the self-assessment? We were pointed to Project Spectrum by some agencies. Is that the best one to use?
No, no, let me see if I can find it. It's the SPRS portal, as I mentioned. Uh, it's a supplier performance risk system. So this is where you want to do your self-assessment. Are
There-
you guys seen the screen?
Yes.
All right, cool. So you got to create a login. They have FAQs themselves. Submit any evidence like your CMMC report, those types of things. But this will walk you through, and what it does is they have all the controls laid out, and then you answer whether you're meeting them or not, and then they'll give you that grade.
Are there other tools that this group should be aware of, either for a self-assessment or for the full audit?
Yeah, so that's the thing. Thank you. That's kind of what I wanted to navigate to as well. So this is your main resource, y'all, for basically everything you need. This is dodcio.defense.gov, and the resources is a wonderful place to live. It talks through the process, uh, kind of walks through DFARS and how it all came about. But this is the stuff, these internal resources, which is gold. So if you're going to be level two, here's your scoping guide, and I have that pulled up already. So it basically walks you through how to scope this thing to build your system security plan and your policies and procedures. So um, they also have the assessment guide. So I would strongly encourage you to download that and understand it. It's more applicable for us, but in the C3PAO auditors, but you guys having an understanding of like how the auditors look at these things is super important as well. And that's here. So, and I'll just give you an example of what you can find here. So yeah, you can reduction in reporting, here, as I mentioned. So this is a good example. So 3.3.6 this is around AU, it's audit and accountability. And there's two assessment objectives. So one control, two assessment objectives that you need to address within your system security plan and your policies and procedures. Um, so you can kind of see how it builds. But what's really cool about this is that this further discussion section where they actually talk about and give you examples of of how you would need to meet this, or an example of how this may come about.
Okay, fantastic. I've shared both those links in the chat as well. I guess
Cool.
any high level trends or observations that you have in your seat from when these have started to change that you want to share with the group?
No, probably the biggest thing is just the time it takes for the level two. Again, we've been doing this for a long time as far as like ISO 27001, HIPAA security role, SOC 2. And we can do most of those in 3 months, even for complicated companies, it's usually like 6 months max because of the level of detail in the NIST framework. It's based off NIST 800 171, if y'all are familiar with the nomenclature there, but having to meet each of the assessment objectives and get your folks in line and get the processes in place to do the monitoring, to do the reviews and that type of thing that are required and need to be documented for when the auditors come through. So planning for a year is a little bit more than, what we normally see. And then lastly, as I mentioned, just one more time is the understanding what systems are in scope and knowing that, oh gosh, we don't have a major upgrade in there. That we're going to be need what we're going to need is going to be really important for everyone.
From a workforce planning perspective, what types of roles at companies are usually involved in this process so that a company can even plan what resources to set aside?
There's usually an executive member owner who kind of says it's usually sales usually drives this, to be honest with you. It's someone from sales saying, our biggest customer or one of our biggest customers is telling us we have to be level two by X date. And then they'll assign usually someone within the IT organization to make it happen, and we'll get the call. The documentation is the most painful part. Having someone to be able to take that off of you is nice. There's some different GRC tools that are available. Some of them are good, some of them are not so good, but still, you kind of need to have someone that understands the controls and how they need to be applied specific to your environment. Um, but that it's very it's very doable. Like I said, they do provide you all the resources to understand exactly what you need to do and also how you're going to be assessed. So there are definitely some pluses to how this thing has been rolled out.
Okay, fantastic. If you have more questions that you've been sitting on, now is your chance. Jay, I want to thank you for joining us today. This has been super helpful from an overview and even from a tactical perspective. The tactical pieces were always the parts I most enjoyed working with your team as well, because I care a lot as an operator about how to execute this at a company level because it is not always super clear. You get the form and then someone says, "Great, figure it out." So it's helpful to have a partner alongside in working on that, but also just to have the advice from an expert. Thank you to everyone who joined today. It's been great to have such a good group. We will be sending a follow-up email with the recording from the session in case there was anything that you wanted to review. We'll also send the deck that Jay had put together and some other pieces about SBCC and Audit Liaison. I think that's it. Any last words that you wanted to share, Jay?
No, thank you all for joining. I do appreciate it, and reach out if you need any help.
Awesome. Thank you all. Have an excellent Thursday. We'll see you
All
soon.
right.